This is a piece of a spalted maple branch that's about 6 inches in diameter, and I cut it about 6 inches long. I'm going to turn this one sideways. So the first thing I need to do is find the center. And then I'm just going to take a Forester bit that's about the size of my drive center. And I'm just going to use a drill for this. Just to give me a flat spot for my drive center to bite into. And then I'm going to line it up in the point from my Forester bit. Give my drive center a few whacks with a wood mallet to lock it in, and then we're going to get this pinched between centers on the lathe. Alright, so now that it's pinched between centers on the lathe, I'm going to start turning this. It is side grain orientation, so I'm going to be turning it with a bowl gouge. And I'm going to go slow at first, and I'm just going to work on taking these corners down and try to make this as round as possible. And I'm going to run it at a slow RPM so that it doesn't shake my lathe around. And once it gets a little bit round, I'll be able to turn the lathe up. Okay, now that it's somewhat round around the center, the next thing I'm going to do is I need to get a tenon. This is going to be the bottom, so that's where I'm going to cut my tenon so that I can mount this in a chuck. Okay, so I got my tenon cut so that I can mount it in my chuck jaws. Put that aside for a minute to get my tailstock backed out of the way. So first thing I need to do is that little nub, I just got to knock it off with a chisel. Then get my chuck up onto the lathe. All right, so now that it's mounted in my chuck, it's just time to final shape the outside of this. So let's see what we can do. Okay, so I'm happy with that shape. Gonna get set up and we're gonna drill this out a little bit and then we'll hollow out the inside of it. Alright, so this is a 2 1/8 inch Forstner, but I'm just gonna drill close to the bottom so that I can just clean it up a little bit and get the little point mark from the Forstner bit out of it. Alright, so I'm going to use my 5/8 bowl gouge just to hollow this entire thing out. Alright, so the last thing I need to do is I need to part this off the tenon and then just let it dry and a little bit of hand sanding. I did do a little bit of sanding off camera so that I don't have to sand too much once it dries. Okay, so I'm parted almost all the way through. I'm going to use a handsaw to finish the cut. Alright, so there's the finished turn bowl. Now it's just a little bit of drying and a little bit of sand, and once it dries. Alright, so now that it's dry, it's been about 2 weeks. It spent 1 week in a paper bag, and then 1 week I pulled it out and let it sit on my workbench, and it is completely dry. It's got about 11% moisture content, and I waited over a couple days and it didn't lose any more weight, so it's all good to go to make some repairs on this rim. There was a spot that I guess was a little bit punky and I had some chip out, so I'm going to use some 2-part epoxy mixed with some white bronze metal powder and make a repair on that. So let me get this 2-part epoxy mixed up and we'll start working on fixing this thing. Alright, so I have my 2-part epoxy and metal powder all mixed up. For the first thing I want to do is I need to back up the backside of the spot that I'm going to make the repair on. So I'm just going to use some painter's tape for that. Put it in, make sure it sticks good. And then it's just a matter of filling it in. I'm not too worried about being messy because this stuff won't soak into the wood. So it's easy to sand off once it cures. Alright, so that's it for that. Now I'm going to come in with another piece of the tape. And I probably want to use one more piece down lower. You want to overlap the tape a little bit. And just pinch the two pieces on the end to kind of contain it, and then come with a little bit more of the epoxy, see if we can get some down in between the tape. Alright, so that's all set up. Now we just gotta wait for that epoxy to harden and we will be good to go. Alright, so I gave the epoxy ample time to cure and harden. So the next thing I need to do is remove the painter's tape that was holding the epoxy in place. And you can see it filled in all those voids pretty good, so now all I have to do is some sanding to clean it up and make it look natural. So there's a good amount of epoxy on this one, so I'm going to power sand it a little bit just to get it close, and then I'll come back and hand sand it the rest of the way. Alright, so that's looking pretty close, so I'm going to come in with some 100 grit sandpaper and start from there. And actually that spot right there, I'm going to want to power sand a little because it got a little bit thick. Alright, so it's all sanded. Just have to take my rotary tool and just clean up the bottom a little bit and sand that down, and then it'll be all ready to finish. Alright, so the last thing I need to do is just a little bit of cleanup on the bottom to get this little bit of the nub that's left from the tenon off of it. So I'm going to be using my rotary tool. I use a Fredome flex shaft. Alright, so now that I got the nub off, all I have is just a little bit of sanding to do. I'm just going to do this one by hand. Alright, so there it is, the finished bird mouth bowl with a little bit of resin work to clean some chip outs on one of the edges. I'm going to get some lacquer on this and then I will show you the finished product. So this is the completed bird's mouth bowl with a couple coats of a water-based lacquer that's semi-gloss, so it doesn't put too much shine on it. And that's pretty much it. It's not that difficult of a project to complete, and you could do it in all various sizes with different logs.